Hello and welcome to episode 72 of PauseCast. It is February the 8th, 2018. I am Jessica Alouette, and I use she, her pronouns.
I'm Mark Hanna, I use he, him. Welcome.
Howdy, Mark.
Hey.
How have you been?
Good, yeah. I've played a bunch more Monster Hunter, surprisingly.
That's somehow not surprising.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't played as much as I played in the first week.
Yeah, that 50 hours in a week is kind of hard to top, my dude.
It's funny because it wasn't 50 hours in the first week.
It was 60 hours.
Yeah,
I'm
62,
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot the additional 10 hours that you
Additional
somehow
12
spent on
hours,
that
yeah.
game.
And now I'm something like 83 hours. So it's been decent. It's been like, half of a 40-hour per week job kind of thing. But it doesn't feel like I've played that much. It just feels like I've played it occasionally, and it's just somehow added up to 20 more hours.
Ay. I mean, time flies when you're having a good time.
Well, exactly,
And,
right?
like, you very clearly have had a good time with Monster Hunter World.
I mean, I always do with Monster Hunter, honestly.
I mean, yeah, it's true. Like every time one has come out, you talk about it at length.
I do,
It's
and
great.
then I play it at length as well.
Turns out those games are, like, exactly the kind of jam that you want.
Definitely, yeah. And it's one of the... I can't think of any other set of games I've played for longer. Actually, I wonder when the first one I played came out. I'm going to Google that real quick.
I think that maybe, like, early aughts.
Yeah, I didn't get it when it was released. I didn't know about it then. But it was released... No, it was released in 2007. So I've probably been playing this game a little over a decade.
There you go.
Not bad.
Yeah. This is PauseCast. This is a weekly show about video game criticism, cool video games, bad video games, video games. We are going to talk about Monster Hunter World a little bit more, I think, because Mark, you probably have some stuff to talk about there, eh?
Yeah, definitely.
And we had a little meeting over lunch, and I think we've got some interesting stuff to talk about with Monster Hunter World. Do you want me to start with what I've been playing this week?
Yeah, I was going to suggest that. We can... this is going to sound bad, but if we're going to talk a lot about Monster Hunter, we can get that out of the way. No. I am interested. What have you been playing? So,
this week, I have been playing... First of all, I played some more Hitman. I did
Nice.
The 6th elusive target, meaning I still have not missed one since the reactivation.
Right. So I was going to say, were there some that you missed that you had to go back and do when they brought them back around?
On all of them on the PC version. I got the first few when I had the game on PS4 originally.
Right. Okay.
But then I kind of fell off of Hitman.
Yeah.
And then now I've been doing all of the elusive targets and doing them on stream, and it's been a great time.
Nice. Have you got all of them?
I have successfully killed each elusive target so far.
Nice.
So
That's
feeling
because
good,
they're meant to be
feeling
quite a
good about
challenge.
that. 6 for 6.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that. I've played a little bit of Dark Souls 2. I've returned to that game recently and started streaming on a half-joke, half-serious character that I have named Dark Solus.
Okay.
After, I made them bald, like Solus, and then I fucked up all of their facial features, which, is pretty much like Solus from the Dragon Age Inquisition video game by BioWare.
vaguely remember that dude.
He looks like an egg. That's all you need to know. He's an egg.
I mean, that's just because he's bald.
Yeah, but, he's particularly egg-shaped. He's also just a huge asshole.
I've heard.
He's the worst. Dragon Age Inquisition's best character, by the way, Iron Bull. I don't know if you...
I think I got up to meeting him, and that was about it.
Iron Bull's real good, is the thing.
He's got, the big horizontal horns, right?
Yeah, he's real strong, too. Hello. And then the other thing I've been playing PUBG, kind of as usual, and Overwatch as Usual as well.
How have you found that? Because you mentioned last week that the character you play the most has been changed.
Yeah, so I guess I'll talk about the mercy adjustments. I talked about this a little on Twitter kind of a few days ago. But now that I've gotten my hands on the mercy changes, I'm still not affected by them.
They just don't really affect your playstyle.
Yeah, they don't affect my playstyle. Like, I've talked before on the show about how Mercy kind of used to have this mass resurrection ability, and a problem that the community perceived with this design was that Mercy players would go hide around the corner and then mass resurrect everyone once they were all down, which created havoc for the enemy team. And then it got moved off to a secondary ability with a couple of charges, and you got an extra charge when you used your ultimate ability, which was formerly just the mass resurrect. Now there is a delay added on to resurrects even during that ultimate ability. There is I believe, a small movement adjustment. Actually, no, it was a more significant movement adjustment during the ultimate to how fast she can fly to her teammates. And so it's, I think, kind of put her back into a better spot, if I'm going to be honest.
Okay.
She was not, like, particularly overpowered ever, I feel, but I feel she's in, like, a decent spot for encouraging the kind of play that people want to see from Mercy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, like I mentioned, there was that perceived problem originally with with players who would hide around the corner and just wait to use that mass resurrect ability, and so it became like an instant erasure if your team couldn't, keep up in a firefight. Now the rest of your team does have to keep up in that firefight, and the Mercy is encouraged to sustain a lot more and engage in more, like, preventative care. So, like, big firefights coming up. Oh, Mercy's going to use her ultimate, and that's going to give her increased healing and damage boosting abilities for the whole team. Because you can chain heal from one target to any targets that are close.
Mm-hmm.
It's at a reduced rate for from the base target, but if you make your base target, say, one of your tanks, then everybody else is just kind of getting supplementary heals while your tank is soaking up most of the damage and being healed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you're still doing all right in that firefight in terms of your sustainability.
Yeah.
It just means that you, as the Mercy player, have to adjust to kind of just prepare and be preventative in your heals and not just kind of mop up afterwards.
Yeah, you're not the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff anymore.
Yeah, exactly. That I think has put her in a good spot. I'm a little bit skeptical about the changes overall still, but I don't think they've had too huge an effect on my playstyle thus far. Hello?
Yep, sorry, I was nodding, doing that silly thing where I forget that no one can see me nod, not even you.
People can see me on stream now. Not in this stream, admittedly. But people can see me on the stream now. I got a webcam this week as well.
How's that been?
I got to test it out last night. It works real good. It's really fun to have my face on camera for once. It's kind of weird because it also adds this dynamic of, oh, I have to look prepared to stream video games. I have to like be presentable to stream.
Yeah, you can't just have your
video
finger in
games.
your nose half the time, eh?
No, yeah, and like I have to have a shirt on, which is like a whole thing. Like if I had my choice, I would not be streaming video games with a shirt on, but alas, I must. That's just how it is. It's comfortable.
Well, it's been warm lately as well. We're at the end of summer. Well, we're not at the end yet, but
Yeah, we're getting up there. Yeah. That's been kind of my week.
Nice.
How about you? What have you been playing? I'm guessing it's Monster Hunter.
It's only Monster Hunter. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, so I've intentionally slowed down a lot in the story because even though it took a long time in terms of hours spent in game to get to where I was up to, it also only took like 5 days, so it felt like I've been rushing through. So I think a lot of the time I've come on has been when my cousin's been on and he's still in the low rank stuff, so I've been using low rank gear to help him through that, taking the opportunity to learn a couple of new weapons, and it just means that I'm not progressing in the story, but I'm still playing and enjoying Monster Hunter. So I've made a little bit of story progress since the last time, which means, a couple of monsters that I hadn't already fought. I actually, right before we recorded tonight, had, for the first time, I failed a single-player quest in Monster Hunter World. Not because I died too much, but I actually ran out of time. The monster I was fighting is just really hard to land a hit on, and I think the weapon I chose just isn't geared well enough towards it. I need one that either does a bit more damage or is a bit more specifically catered to its weaknesses. So I picked one that's just raw damage, so it's not going to affect any weaknesses of it at all. But that was interesting. It's a monster that's been in previous games, but redone a fair amount for the world. It's got new moves and stuff. I quite like how it looks fighting it now. It's very ominous, and its abilities are really, really obvious. Like, visually it looks really nice, I think. And just, it's a bit clearer now that it's on a bigger screen and everything, just what this monster's meant to look like in detail. So it was fun, but I'm annoyed with myself that I didn't beat it. I've fought heaps of them in previous games and beaten them, but after the recording, I'm definitely going to go back and prepare to try again.
Yeah, it can always be real frustrating when you get so close to the end of a hunt and you just can't hit it. I ran into that enough times in Monster Hunter 3 that it was just it was real fucking bad. I felt bad.
This monster was it was in its weakened stage for the last 10 minutes. And with usually, when a monster's in that point, you can capture it and end the quest without having to kill it. But this is a type of monster, an Elder Dragon, which cannot be captured. So I didn't have that option. I had to finish it off. And it just... I was probably 5 or 10 hits away from it, honestly. But no, I ran out of time.
Yeah, it's a shit feeling, but...
Oh, actually, no, I'm glad. I've finally met something that's a challenge again. I'm sorry. That sounds really, egotistical. I've played a lot of Monster Hunter,
you've put hundreds of hours into this series.
Yeah.
So, it completely makes sense that you wouldn't be struggling with all these monsters in the same way that, I think a lot of series newbies are going to be struggling with.
Yeah, because... I've read a fair few accounts of people who struggle when they get up to the Diablos, and honestly, I don't blame them. It's a pain in the ass to fight, especially if you're not used to it. It digs a lot and charges at you, and if you don't know where the openings are, you'll just be running up to it when it decides it's going to turn around and charge, and you'll go flying. So it's been really nice to read people's accounts of how they fought it and lost, and then went back and fought it, and were a little more careful and watched it more carefully and found the openings and finally beat it. And I've seen some people say that's when Monster Hunter clicked for me. So that's really nice to see people saying that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was listening to the Giant Bomb cast earlier today, and they were talking about how they had a couple of those this is when Monster Hunter kind of clicked for me. One of the hosts, and I forget which one, so please forgive me. I still am struggling with distinguishing the voices that are on the Giant Bomb cast because it's a lot of dudes.
Right. Yeah.
But one of them was talking about the experience of kind of playing through a round with a few other of their friends, and they were being carried through. And then they went and fought the same monster that they just fought on their own. And they had one of those epic 30-minute fights, and they were this is when it clicked. This is when I understand what Monster Hunter is. I get it now. It's cool to see those click moments for that series coming through.
It really
It's
is.
good to see Monster Hunter having like its moment
Yes.
as a series.
Oh my god, yes. I'm so excited that other people are playing it and enjoying it who haven't done that before. Either they haven't played it before, or they've played it before and it hasn't clicked for them, and now they're liking it. I'm so stoked.
And it's not on a handheld, is the other
That
thing.
is really nice. I mean, I've enjoyed playing it on handheld, but it's real nice to have it on a dedicated console as well.
Yeah. Apparently Capcom is not planning on building that on the Switch right now.
They actually had a Monster Hunter game on the Switch, it just didn't have a localized English release.
Yeah, it was Double Cross, which was effectively Generations Ultimate.
Yeah, so Generations was called Monster Hunter Cross in Japan, and previously they've... actually, no, I think Ultimate has just been what they've used for the recent handheld ones before Generations, rather than being like the one after it. But yeah, they've tended to do sort of like 2 things per generation. They've done one that's got low rank and high rank, and then one that's sort of... it's got the same content plus more, and they add G rank above high rank as well, and Double Cross was kind of that 2 generations.
Yeah, I mean, the West only has gotten the Ultimate releases. Like, Monster Hunter 4 and Monster Hunter 4G are 2 separate games. Monster Hunter 4 never came over to Western audiences, but Monster Hunter 4G did in the form of Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate.
I forgot that we'd missed one there, actually. Yeah, you're right.
Yes, and like we got 3 and we got 3 Ultimate, but we didn't get the original version of 4. We just got 4 Ultimate when that came out. And now it's kind of the inverse, weirdly. We've gone through like a full kind of cycle of that, where we had like, oh yeah, we have both. Now we have the Ultimate one, but not the original.
Yeah,
and
it's
then,
always seemed a bit strange and unpredictable which few don't get an English release.
Yeah,
there's been a couple,
Generations
but it
was
hasn't
then,
been like a common thread of it's always ones. There's always the second one or it's always the first one, and we skip a generation. It's just been like a couple of random ones haven't come over here.
yeah, and Generations being the one that then got an Ultimate version in Japan, and then not over here was like weird.
Yeah.
And now it's Monster Hunter World seems to have kind of everything built for the major consoles, all in one shot. That's kind of where that's at right now.
Well, they would have been working on it from well before when Double Cross came out as well.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that they'll eventually have either an expansion to it you can get that'll add a whole G-rank tier, or another second game like they normally do. But I don't imagine that's going to happen anytime soon, given it just came out.
Yeah. So last week as well, I mentioned that Monster Hunter World has a little bit of a different narrative beat than kind of previous Monster Hunter games, and unfortunately, you didn't end up touching on the thing that I wanted to discuss there.
Yeah, I was quite caught up in my excitement, I think, when we talked about it last week.
I do want to have a conversation about that now, though. Now that we've had a little bit of time to, like, first of all, discuss it beforehand, and second of all, we had a chance to, I guess, calm on the excitement a little bit.
Yeah.
Be a little bit more chill. So we can talk about the actual narrative of Monster Hunter World. Do you want to introduce this, or shall I?
Yeah, I think I'll start with the way previous games have handled this.
Sure.
So up until Generations, at least, the narrative has typically been you are a hunter who the Hunters Guild has sent to some backwater village to be their village hunter and protect them from the monsters that live nearby and threaten their lives and livelihoods. And that's sort of been the motivation for you to go and hunt the monsters, is they're threatening the village in some way. And that's been pretty much a steady theme, different villages and different games. For example, Monster Hunter Tri, which was the one on the Wii, there were earthquakes around the village they thought were caused by a monster, and the story was based around finding the monster causing those earthquakes and getting rid of it. And you thought you knew what it was, and you got rid of it, and the earthquake happened again, so it must have been something else, and you eventually found the right one and got rid of it, and then the end credits rolled. Whereas Generations changed that a little bit. You were no longer just serving the Hunters Guild, you were now serving a thing called the Wykedium, I think it was, like the Wyvern Academy kind of deal. And that was sort of more of a research thing. And it changed the narrative a bit. I didn't follow it as easily in Generations. It was a bit strange because the whole point of the game was to let you go to all of the old villages you protected in previous games. It was kind of like a best of game, really. The narrative was a bit weird, and it's never been a super strong feature of the Monster Hunter games, I think I've said before. Whereas now, Monster Hunter World has done something pretty much completely different to the other games. They've kept that sort of researchy focus. The idea being that there's this event that happens periodically called the Elder Crossing, where powerful monsters called Elder Dragons migrate across the sea, and over years, the Hunters Guild has sent fleets over to this place, which they call the New World, which we'll talk about. And you're one of the fifth part of the fifth fleet that's been sent there, following a large Elder Dragon that's making the migration. And then the story revolves around tracking that Elder Dragon and then eventually making sure it doesn't destroy the island. But it's the fact that you're not being sent to something established so much as encroaching on new ground is quite different to how the other games have handled it. And although that same sort of, oh yes, it's about protecting stuff, it's still there. Like, if you read the description for the quest, which you don't have to do, then they'll be like, oh, this powerful monster is messing up the ecosystem, go kill it. It's weak and easy to miss. You very much get the feeling, and this has been true for the other games as well, that every time you see a new monster, you're going to be asked to kill it. It's how you interact with. It's the only way really you can interact with the monsters in this game. They have tried to change that a little bit, in that now you track them as well, and I think it does add a bit to the researchy feel, how you will track things they leave behind, like footprints, or they've left mucus somewhere, or whatever. That's added a bit to it, but it doesn't change the overall thing of find a new monster and kill it.
Yeah, you do get research for those minor kind of, oh, you found footprints, and now you know what this monster's footprints look like a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I don't even think you can ID the monster effectively until you actually see it for the first time. You've tracked it.
You can eventually.
Then it gives you the name and such.
So when you first encounter a new monster, there's kind of two research levels. One is in the quest, it's how well are you tracking the monster? Do you know where it is? Do you know what its status is? Based on if you've seen it and what traces you've found. There's also another one that goes up more slowly, and the more of these monsters you encounter, the more that will go up. And eventually, you'll go into a quest, you find one footprint, and you know where it is always after that, because you're just really familiar with this monster.
Gotcha.
But that doesn't happen until later in the game, because you have to have encountered more of them.
Yeah, and the biggest point contributor when you're doing Monster Hunter stuff is just going to be, oh, you killed a monster, and now you have 50 research points for it.
Or whatever the number is, yeah.
Yeah, whatever the number actually is irrelevant. But from what I remember from the beta, it's the single biggest points contributor.
Yeah, that'd be right. You get some stuff for spotting it, which spotting it is more than tracks. If you trigger a trap on it, then you get some, but killing it you get the most, yeah.
Yeah.
And the point of the research is it gives you more information about the monster, and it's specifically the type of information that helps you fight it more effectively, especially if you're aiming for getting a certain material from it. So it all does come back to killing the monster.
Yeah, and it eliminates the need for an external wiki and stuff as well.
Yeah, so that's one thing I think I mentioned last week, where a lot of the changes they've made seem to be, hey, people were had to look this stuff up out of the game a lot, so let's pull it into the game, which has helped streamline it a lot, definitely.
Well, the other thing that we want to talk about, though, all that research stuff is well and good, but the other part of this element is that new world that you mentioned. Austin Walker, in his review of Monster Hunter World, described the game as as a new world which offers intricate environments, lively creatures, kinetic combat, and a dash of colonialist fantasy. And like first and foremost, like that's right out front in the usage of the term "new world." That's like a historically loaded term.
It's hard to know if it's intentional or bad localization, because I think that localization into English has never been really a super strong suit of the Monster Hunter games. I don't know if they meant for that aspect to come across or just happened to. But either way, the effect is kind of the same.
Yeah, like, even if it is not the intent of the piece, it's still, like, read on it.
Yeah.
And still offer, like, it would then offer insight into, like, how much research was done in the process of getting this localization done, which would be to say not enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like how the title monster's name is the Nergigante, which I'm so sure people will be mispronouncing in a really nasty way.
Yeah, absolutely. But, yeah, the New World and colonialism. The specter of colonialism kind of hangs over, again, that phrasing. That phrasing of the, like, New World specifically evokes, like, Christopher Columbus and the expedition to the Americas. And the subsequent, like, let's be honest, genocide, or near genocide of the Native American populations of the Americas. Like, that's kind of where that terminology leads you.
Yeah.
And so for Monster Hunter to then describe a journey that you take aboard a ship and go to this new world, it adds a troubling bent to that narrative.
Yeah, and in the way you interact with the world and the monsters, it has sort of an ownership feeling of it. You know, you take whatever you find, and you can kill whatever you find.
Yes.
And they're really the only ways you interact with the world. Either you're tracking and killing a monster. I mean, you can capture them as well, but you'd have to fight them until they're nearly dead in order to capture them. It's not. I don't think that's really a substantial difference there.
No, it's really not. And the end result of the capture is also, again, let's be honest, it's the monster is dead.
Oh, they do actually. There is some dialogue talking about capture and release in order to help your scout flies, which are what help you track it, get its scent better. Although, once you reach a certain point in the game, capturing the monster will sometimes add an optional mission for you to fight it in the special arena, so it basically gets released into a box in space for you to fight and kill it.
Huh. That's,
It's done for gameplay purposes, but yeah, it's kind of if you think enough about it, yeah.
If you think enough about what that is doing there.
Monster Hunter's always had arenas, typically before it's been, you get a set piece of gear and you fight one or more monsters in an enclosed space, an arena, and they've never really gone into before getting the monsters to put in the arena, whereas now you can sort of do that.
Gladiatorial sports.
Where were we just before that, though?
We were talking about kind of...
Oh, actually, that's right. So the other way you can interact with the world, not the monsters, is anything you find, you take. So plants, mushrooms, you can capture animals you find with your little capture net. Any little bits of rocks, you can mine them and take things away. And again, you can, like, it's how Monster Hunter's always worked. It seems a gameplay purpose, but that's just, again, it's that, I've come to this new place and I have the right to take anything now. That theme is still there in that feeling.
Yeah. I'm going to read a small excerpt as well from Austin Walker's review. You can find this on Waypoint, and you'll find a link to this in the Twitch chat now if you are watching live, or you can find a link to this in the show notes if you are not listening to this live. And so I'm just going to read a little excerpt from this review here. Monster Hunter World is a game where the most realized elements, the creatures and the places, are meant to be mastered. You master them so that you can cut them into pieces, and you cut them into pieces so you can make better gear. and you make better gear so that you can master them better. Even when you choose to trap monsters, which is a slightly more difficult task than simply killing them, you're rewarded with their pieces when you get home. You're not a hero, you are a hunter who kills for sport. In our current moment, the phrase big game hunter brings to mind the Trump sons posing with their kills, holding dead leopards and detached elephant trunks as sublimated stand-ins for wealth, privilege, and supposed masculine strength. But the association of the phrase big game hunter is older than the Trumps. For as long as the modern West has colonized, the act with which it marked itself as the West, it has reduced the lands and its margins to hunting grounds. Distant regions are places where bounty can be gained, both literal and metaphorical. Through the full set of low-rank quests, Monster Hunter World embodies exactly this colonialist fantasy. The pillaging of natural resources, the violence against native people, and the rhetorical establishment of the colonizer as civilized and rational. Which, like again, just based off of what you were talking about just a little bit earlier with regards to these elements, like that seems like it's very much kind of an accurate take on how Monster Hunter World chooses to handle its narrative.
I don't know if that I'd describe it myself as hunting for sport, but I mean, you want to play the game because it's fun, and I can try to defend this through what I've seen in previous games, but what's the point if it's not clear in this game and it's meant to onboard new players?
Exactly. I mean, the previous games are still worth talking about in their own regard, though, because we also have to consider kind of the message that those previous games tried to hit a little harder with, and what some of the source material for Monster Hunter has tried to get at before, which isn't this. There is a lot of ecological statements that Monster Hunter kind of ends up making. As you mentioned before, a lot of the previous games have this structure revolving around the hunter being sent to a village by the Hunters Guild to effectively just protect the people who are there. They are encroaching on a monster's territory, and they're threatened by that monster in some way, shape, or form. And when that threat reaches a head, the hunter is called in to take care of business and eliminate the threat to an established human civilization. There is a message to be found in those games about preserving the environment and the importance of preserving the environment and preserving balance in the environment. Humans, by default, do disrupt that balance, but they're still also trying to survive and find their own place in that balance.
Part of the story of Monster Hunter World is about, something's gone wrong, and if we don't intervene, then the entire ecology of this place will be destroyed. And there is a justification for a bunch of the late low-rank story fights. And I think the impression is still, although honestly the game doesn't focus very much on this at all, except in the really early cutscenes. The impression is still that the hunters that were sent along with these fleets are there to protect everyone else who was sent along, the researchers and the engineers and stuff. And the actual settlement is isolated on the very coast, right on the coast as well. But yeah, it still has that feeling of encroaching, and there's one point in the game, for example, where you need to get to this place, there's a dangerous monster in the way, so you kill the monster, rather than the monster's a danger to you where you are. And it's a relatively small difference, I suppose, but it just adds to that overall theme of it.
Yeah. It's very difficult to, kind of look at Monster Hunter World as a whole and separate it from the colonialist fantasy that it ultimately does kind of evoke.
I'm glad at least that this new world that you're going to isn't completely populated with people and you're displacing them or anything like that. They don't have that. There is a point in the story where, you go and find... Turns out there are some people who live for at least one, and you find one, and they just can't tell you to go and hunt some more monsters before they'll help you, so... There is that.
I think it's also really interesting to, like, consider, again, that ecological impact angle that Monster Hunter World does have, though. You mentioned there's, like, a point in which the story hits, and it's this point of, intervention is required or everything is fucked. Which, like, also leads me to, like, wonder, how did things get to that point that the ecology wouldn't just naturally correct itself? Why does it require human intervention?
Hand-wavy bullshit. If we don't drive this monster off so it dies somewhere else, it will explode and destroy the entire island. Yeah.
Plot armor.
And then that happens, and then it turns out, now this thing is also going to mess things up, and you get rid of that, and then, no, that's actually awoken this problem, you need to deal with this problem, and that's where I'm at now, and I'm assuming that after this, we'll be like, we've found the source of it all, go kill it. Which is how Monster Hunter often tends to go. Actually, Monster Hunter is often... They've had kind of a theme of the story they just don't care about in late high rank, and once you've finished it, they chuck a bunch of in-game bosses that came completely out of nowhere at you. Often they're in-game bosses from previous games. I don't know if they're going to do that in Monster Hunter World yet. I kind of hope they will, just because I think it's nice to have more of those tough in-game bosses. I'm sure there is an end boss, because they've foreshadowed it briefly a couple of times, but I don't know yet what it is. But they've already started laying grounds for the justification to send you to fight it.
Gotcha. Alright, shall we move on to our inbox, perhaps?
Yeah, have we got anything in there this week?
We don't have anything in the inbox this week, unfortunately. Aww. If you want to ask questions and hear them answered live on the show, you can email us, pausecastshow@gmail.com. And we will answer your questions for you.
It's always fun when we get questions.
It's super fun when we get questions. I love getting people's questions.
Yeah.
And I love, like, answering them on the show. It's so much fun for me to do. So, if you have a question about video games, about kind of anything, throw it pausecastshow@gmail.com, and we will answer your questions. Tell us the story, maybe, as well. That's fun. Alright. I think I'm going to move on to something else that I want to talk about this week.
Yeah, go for it.
Have you heard the term game sense before this afternoon when I told you about what this means?
Not before this afternoon when you told me what this means.
Okay. So you have heard it before, because I told you this afternoon what it means. I'm going to talk about game sense. For those who are not familiar with this term, game sense refers to your general level of awareness when you're playing a game about the various options that are available to you, and it enables you to react in situations a little bit more appropriately. So, where do I start with this? I'm going to start with Overwatch, and kind of competitive multiplayer games in general. And while the concept of game sense does apply to, like, single player games, it's kind of most broadly useful when we're talking about multiplayer games. When we're talking about things like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, where your game sense can be knowing what gunshots sound like, and what particular, like, hearing particular guns off in the distance, the ability to locate an enemy just based entirely on sound. That is all, like, contributing to your game sense, knowing your positioning and stuff as well. This also applies in Overwatch, knowing what your enemies sound like, knowing kind of typical grouping, and knowing kind of where your teammates are, what your situation is, what sort of counters you have. This is all stuff that, like, it's kind of really, really... it's kind of tricky to pick up on a lot of this stuff, but if you can do it, it's all stuff that's really, really advantageous to have. If you have a very highly developed game sense in a multiplayer game, you're going to have, even if you have like the shittiest gear, you're going to have an immediate tactical advantage over anybody with a lower kind of sense of what's going on in general in that game. It's kind of weird to, like, I can talk about this conceptually all I want, but it's actually difficult to talk about, like, I guess how to grow it and how to make your enhance your games.
It's a thing that experience does, I think. It's kind of like getting used to the controls of a game, and you go from, oh, I want to punch, and to punch you press triangle, so I'll press triangle, to, oh, I'm going to punch, and your hands know what to do. You know, it's like any complex skill or recognizing symbols or whatever. It's the more you experience it, the more your brain's going to map onto this means that, and then eventually you don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah. Which, like, if you look at people who are, like, speedrunning, for example, you can see, like, those people have the most acute sense of everything that is going on in that game in every frame of their run, essentially.
But we're thinking about very different things to what someone who's not trying to speedrun it will be thinking about, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's all of that, but then there's also, like, the things that people are thinking about. They're thinking about, like, AI patterns, and they're thinking about, like, how is this boss going to fight me? Is it going to use this? But, like, it goes even deeper than that. Like, oh, this boss is, I see this boss do this, like, few frames of animation, and I know, oh, so they're giving me a pattern that really kind of sucks, and that's unfortunate, because it means this is going to take more time now, because they've given me bad RNG. It is just a lot of experience and a lot of this, I guess, becoming second nature. But it takes, like, if you really wanted to develop it, it also need to have a lot of, like, conscious analysis of your gameplay. And you need to, like, you need to establish a rough sense of what's going on first, and then you can start refining it.
I don't know if it always needs to be conscious analysis, but you need some form of feedback. So for things like recognizing a sound for what it is, then conscious analysis will definitely help. But there's some things that just through the game's own feedback you'll get a sense for. Like in Monster Hunter, you know, I tried doing this and I got hit instead of hitting the monster. So you eventually get used to the feel of how they move, how you move with your certain weapon, and how those can fit together. And I think it's a similar sort of thing. Like, you'll start to recognize, oh, it's done this in a very short amount of time. I know what it's going to do the next few seconds, so where I need to be and what I will need to do in response.
Well, the reason I also say conscious analysis is thinking about, like, multiplayer games. I think about Overwatch. If I get into a situation where, you know, I've died for some reason. Oh no, what's happened? I need to think consciously about, oh, what happened in this situation? What went wrong? How can I improve on this and not make the same mistake again? That is a question that you need to kind of ask yourself repeatedly to grow that game sense, like I was saying. And I'm grateful that PUBG has made it easier to develop your game sense in that game, because, like, that game also used to be in a form where it was very hard to kind of get a grasp on things without just, like, getting tons and tons of experience. You couldn't look at other people and say, oh, look at other people in the particular game that you're in, and say, oh yeah, I should have done this and this and this in this exact situation, or here's what went wrong, here's what they got right. And learning from those experiences as part of developing your game sense. I'm floundering here.
No.
It feels like I'm floundering.
No, I understand what you're talking about. It sounds to me a lot like any massively new skill, honestly. How it's just about the more experience you get with it, the more you grow these associations of, you know, this behavior will help and this won't, sort of thing. Or like you were talking about before, recognizing certain things. So you were talking about hearing a certain gunshot noise. Okay, I know someone over there has got this weapon, and that means this, and that, and I should do this and not that, and whatnot.
Yeah.
Experience is a lot of it. It's the sort of thing that can grow passively, and you probably can speed it up through conscious analysis if you know how to give yourself the right sort of feedback. Having someone who's already got that game sense to help you out and say, like, oh, that noise means that gun is probably going to help a lot with that as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's a lot of, that ends up being a lot of how I developed my abilities at PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds at all. Was just, like, having other people who very fortunately knew what they were doing.
I think, partly because it's just the game that's on my mind, but the conversation feels very relevant to Monster Hunter as well, because every time you progress to seeing a new monster, you have to stop and take your time to learn its moveset, learn where the openings are, find out its weaknesses in terms of elemental damage, and maybe status effects, and then you use that to go and beat it and get really good at beating it without getting hurt. And if you're fighting it with someone else who already knows it, you can learn based off them. It'll be different for every weapon. So like when I've started going back and trying different weapon types, I'm seeing the same monsters in very different lights, because suddenly, like if I'm using the Insect Blade, which is a very aerial weapon, I'm often up quite high. It's got jumping attacks sort of built into it. So a lot of the downward focused attacks I don't need to worry about so much. But if I'm using dual swords, I don't really jump around a lot, and those attacks can hit me now, so I've got to watch out for them. Or if I'm using a lance, and suddenly I'm not thinking about dodging, I'm thinking about blocking and countering after the block. So every time there's a new monster or you want to use a new weapon, you have to stop and develop those links again. Like starting a new game as well, I guess, like a different game you haven't played before. You start off and the controls might not respond exactly to you because you're still thinking this button does that and that does that, until eventually it's like lifting my arm. I don't need to think about all the individual muscle movements. It's just, oh, I want to do that, and my hands know how the controller works.
Yeah. I also think that it's really interesting to think about like game sense across genre as well. Like there is a point to which you develop the skill and sense to play like first-person shooters. Use that as an example. That's not a genre that everyone can play, but once you pick it up, like as a genre, you have the skill and sense to play a good portion of first-person shooters.
Widely shared control schemes will help a lot with that.
Yeah, for sure. Like there is a standard kind of first-person shooter set of controls, especially if you're playing on if you are playing on a controller.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if you were playing a game that had the right stick is movement, the left stick is look around.
Yeah, if you weren't already used to that, that would be wild, and you'd be looking for a way to re-standardize those controls.
Yeah,
because that is how your sense of the game works, and if it inverts that fucks with you for a bit. It could be, it'd be fun. I just thought of a fun game design thing that you could do as a like disorientation mechanic in a first-person shooter would be to do exactly that. Would be to switch the function of the sticks around.
There was
so
one
that if you got like flashbanged or something like that in a hardcore first-person shooter, all of a sudden you just completely lose all ability to move. It's great.
There was a confusion effect in Monster Hunter Generations, which the 3DS, at least the old ones, only had a single analog stick, and it would invert that analog stick, so your movement would be inverted while you were confused.
Oh, I remember that. That's not even just in Generations. That's very much in 3 Ultimate.
Was it? What for?
Same sort of thing, I believe.
Because that was a new status effect that was added for that monster that was introduced in Generations.
Maybe I'm thinking of something else. I feel like I remember at some point in Monster Hunter 3, though, my controls got inverted somehow.
Okay. If they do, I can't remember that point. But it's interesting because once you realize what's happened, your brain can quickly remap a rudimentary sense of how to use it inverted. But then, of course, the worry becomes that moment where it switches back and you're standing still as you change direction, and you might get hit. So there's a neat video on the YouTube channel Smarter Every Day, which I think is a really cool channel. Actually, you should check it out if you haven't heard of it. Where the guy who runs it teaches himself to ride a bike that a friend of his made, which is inverted. So if you turn the I want to say steering wheel, that's the wrong thing. The handlebars left, the wheel turns right. And if you turn the handlebars right, the wheel turns left. Which you can imagine would be a really, really hard thing to teach yourself. Mm-hmm. He just talks about how it took ages, but once his brain clicked, it just had it, and then like his phone would ring or something, and his brain would fall back on the old mode. There's a video way later on, I think, where he after having taught himself to ride this reverse bike and gotten really used to it, then he tried to ride a normal bike, and he just couldn't, because he'd been turning the handlebars the wrong way. Until, again, like, after 20 minutes of it, it just clicked, and so, oh wait, no, this is how you do it. And it was fine. Brains are weird. Brains are cool.
Brains are very weird. Why did Brain do that? Why did Brain do that?
Oh, brain plasticity is just super cool. Like how we can sort of recode signals. Like there are I don't know if implants is quite the right word, but like a thing to go on your tongue that will interpret what you would see sort of and translate into like tingles on your tongue and like a grid. And people who can't see have had this and used it and gotten used to it, and eventually your brain just basically starts to interpret that new signal as light and dark, as though you could see it, because it starts to understand that's what it represents. Brains are real cool.
Brains are fucked up, but cool. Yo, I'm not wrong. Brains are fucked up. You ever think about brains? Alright. I think we are done here. Thank you very much for listening to this week's episode of PauseCast. Before we go into the rest of our wrap-up, Mark, what are you looking forward to playing this week?
Monster Hunter.
Still?
Of course. I haven't finished it. And, I mean, finishing Monster Hunter is kind of like a weird concept.
Yeah,
I've still got
you could hunt infinite things in Monster Hunter if you really wanted to.
But also, like, I've got others who I'm helping get further through and want to play with more. I'm hoping that more people I know will eventually get it. Hint, hint.
Mm-hmm.
So I can play it with them. But yeah, no, I think it's the only game I've really got in mind to play. Honestly, it's possible I'll pick up something else. I don't expect to. How about you?
I have a couple of things that I think I'm looking forward to playing this week. First is there is an early access first-person shooter that has come out recently and caught my eye, called Battalion 1944.
Oh, cool! A World War II game. Never seen one of those. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a
very generic
multiplayer
game.
A multiplayer 5 versus 5 first-person shooter, kind of harkening back to the days of like classic Call of Duty and classic Medal of Honor.
Okay.
It's caught my eye because it's quite pretty and it's cheap. It's $15 for this multiplayer experience. Looks great. It's being built on Unreal. Published by Square? What?
Wait, published by Square, but it's in early access?
Published by Square. It's in early access.
That seems really strange. Normally, early access games seem to be indie games, not AAA games, and Square is a AAA
It's by an
publisher.
indie developer being published by Square.
Interesting.
It's not being developed by any of their main studios. Like, it's not an IDOS or Square Enix proper game. It's by Bulkhead Interactive, who previously made the Turing Test, also published by Square Enix. I'm interested in it because I really like World War II shooters, because Call of Duty is expensive, and because like it seems like it could scratch a particular itch. And again, it caught my eye for being a Square published FPS, which is like not a thing that I think of when I think of Square Enix.
Yeah.
Kind of weird. We'll see where that goes. I might pick it up. I might not. We shall see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I'm almost back to where I was in my Overwatch competitive ranking, so maybe getting back up there. Maybe a bit more Rainbow Six.
You know, that just means you're about to hit a losing streak, hey?
Oh, don't do that. Listen, I had my losing streak of like, and I'm not kidding you, about 13 matches, and I've had just enough of that. I lost like almost 300 rating points for that. Like,
is that a lot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Considering I've spent several seasons to get above the ranking and back down in now as a result of that losing streak. It was
infuriating.
Some rough stuff. I'm bouncing back though. I'm almost back up in silver, so that's something. I'm looking forward to playing some more of that and getting back up there.
Mm-hmm.
Getting back on the horse. All right. Thank you for listening to the 72nd episode of PauseCast. If you like what you heard and would like to support the show, there's a few ways you can do that. First and foremost, you can rate the show on iTunes. You can subscribe to the show on YouTube. You can do a thing where, I don't know, you tweet the show. I think that's the terminology. I don't know what the teens are doing. But you can share the show with your friends, and those are all free ways to help us out. If you would like to support the show financially, though, we have a way that you can do that, and it is our Patreon. Even $1 a month helps support the show a lot, and it means a lot to us. Thank you very much to our patrons. Ash E, Noah Holmes, PD, Corey Bat, Allerdrain, Para, Mary, Sammy, Rezidoke, for their continuing support of the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It is seriously like mind-blowing that we can even like pay for the show's costs through Patreon now, and it's really great. So thank you to all of our supporters. Again, it just means a lot. What else do I need to cover? If you want to find the show on YouTube, by the way, you can go to bit.ly/PauseCastYT. That'll take you to our YouTube page. If you want to find Mark on the internet, where would you find Mark on the internet?
I'm on Twitter at HonestUniverse, and I blog as well, though not about video games, at honestuniverse.com. How about you?
You can find me online at CockatielCutie. You can find me streaming at MaximumGun.org. And yeah, those are the places you can find me online.
Oh yeah, and if anyone listens to the show and plays Monster Hunter on PS4 and wants someone to play with, flick me a DM on Twitter. My DMs are open, and I'll be happy to play with you if the times work out.
Sweet. Thank you to Leon for the use of our theme song, Honey Milk Island. You can find Leon's music and download some of it for free at soundcloud.com/LEYAWN. And that's going to do it for us this week. Again, thank you very much for listening to this episode of PauseCast. We'll see you next week. And, bird up!
Bye.